Howdy everyone. Okay, so let's see, my last video, when was that? It feels like it was forever ago, but I guess it wasn't too long, maybe last weekend, I don't remember. But I believe in that video I said I was going to be talking about the GRT support that I've experienced over time working with my avionics. I'm going to talk a little bit about them real quick before I jump back into what I'm working on the actual airplane itself. So let's go back a few years, probably about the time that I got my first kit. Actually, about 4 years ago, I started looking into everything. Right, I started looking at avionics. I started looking at paint schemes. I started looking at engine stuff. I started looking at propeller stuff. All that, right? You know, the first kit was on its way or just showed up, and I was totally into getting this airplane built, and I needed to figure out all this stuff. So I was researching a lot of things, trying to get an idea of what I wanted. I consider myself to be a somewhat intelligent person. I've been in aviation my entire life. My day-to-day job is in the aerospace industry. So I'm around aviation quite a bit. I've been around aviation, you know, a lot. So I know avionics a little bit. I was an avionics technician in the military, but of course, you know, that was 100 years ago, and the technology today is completely different. But when it came down to building the airplane, I wanted to build everything, and I wanted to do my own avionics. I wanted to do my own wiring harnesses, make my own connectors, and, you know, do my own soldering and crimping and splicing and heat shrink tubing and cleaning and all this stuff, right? So I've done a lot of that in the past, so it was nothing new to me. I've got the knowledge, I've got the equipment, but what I didn't know was what the individual components were, how they operated. I didn't know how they interfaced with each other. You know, at the time I didn't even know what an EFIS was. That was new to me. I didn't know what an EFIS was. Just all that kind of stuff, right? Backup battery systems, you know, you've got comm radios and transponders and, you know, EFIS and engine monitors and, you know, blah, 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 all this stuff. So going through the process of learning a lot of this and trying to figure out what I was going to use, I settled on GRT. I had looked at MGL quite a bit. I was kind of sold on them initially, but ultimately decided on GRT. So the MGL stuff, the Garmin stuff, the Dynon stuff, I don't know anything about any of those products. I haven't used any of them. I haven't really been exposed to any of those products. GRT is the only thing I've had experience with. So coming forward, I get into this avionics build, and I finally figured out what components I wanted to buy, and I buy them and I start putting them in, and I start doing the wiring, and it was a really steep learning curve. Like I said, you know, I had a lot of things that I assumed were not true. For just as an example, I started reading, and there was a lot of verbiage about serial ports. I didn't know what a serial port was. I thought if you looked at the backside of a component, if you looked, let's just as an example, you looked at the backside of the EFIS, and let's say there was a 6-pin connector back there. I thought that could be a serial port, but obviously that's not totally correct. It can be just a single pin. So then going through the different manuals, right? Each component has multiple manuals. Usually each individual item has an installation manual and an operator's manual. So I had a lot of manuals, and most of them are online, and different components use a little bit different language, right? Some say serial port in their verbiage. Some say, you know, some will say serial port 1 and 2. Others will say pin 1 and 2. Others will say port 1 and 2. Others will say, you know, port pin number 2, whatever. So there was this really steep learning curve trying to figure out all this stuff, and that's where GRT came in. Their tech support was awesome. I dealt with their support only through email, and what I noticed was that initially they assumed that I was somewhat intelligent with avionics and that I somewhat knew the language, right? So the first couple of correspondence back and forth with them, they were at a lot higher level, right? They would say, oh, you just need to go in and flip this, do that, and serial port and baud rate, whatever, and you're fine. And I'm like, I don't know what you just said. I don't understand the language. That's part of the problem. So through the back and forth with emails, they started to dumb down how they were talking to me. And by that, I don't mean that they were talking down to me. I never felt like they were treating me as an idiot. I never felt like I was being talked down to or being, belittled in any way. They were just modifying their approach and modifying their language to me so that I could better understand it, which I greatly appreciated because that made a world of difference. They did a lot of hand-holding, which was great, which that's what I needed at the time for this particular, these couple of issues that I was having. So they were not only helping me with my problem, but they were educating me on the language and the proper terms and all these little details, which was great. What I also noticed was as the emails progressed and the conversation progressed, then I started up the other side of the curve, so to speak, where as I started to understand and I started to learn, then they were not holding my hand quite as much. It's kind of like the Vans instructions, right? When you first get started, they specifically say, take bolt A, put it in hole B, tighten it with nut C, torque it to torque D, and then later on they just say, put this together. And that's kind of like the progression that I had with GRT, and for me that worked out just perfect. The other thing that I really like, and again, I don't know if other companies do this, but with GRT, when you correspond with their tech support in email, at the bottom of each email, there's a little link, and I forget what it says exactly. It says something about, click here to view your entire file or something like that. When you do that, you get a page-by-page actual the conversation, your email conversation with them in its entirety, step by step, as it took place, so to speak. So this is what I printed out. This is my entire conversation with GRT. This is 13 pages, I believe, of back and forth emails. And I really like that because not only is it a hard copy, but this will go in my airplane files. And if in the future I make some kind of change or I have some kind of issue, potentially I can go back through the conversation and relive how they walked me through to fix the problems. And I'll be using this just as a backup resource, if you will. I won't have to try to remember which email address it was that I used, or have to go back through and hope that 10 years from now, and if I still have the same email address, if I go back into that email, am I still going to have this conversation in there? Is it still going to be in my email files somewhere? This way I know I have it, I know where to find it, and if I ever have a problem with something, the answers may already be in here. So I really like that a lot. So I don't have any affiliation with GRT other than I'm a customer. I doubt that they give a crap about me as far as my YouTube channel and what I have to say about them publicly. They probably don't really know that I exist other than an email. But I thought it was important just to give them a shout out and say that I totally appreciate their help. I literally couldn't have done this without them, and I appreciate their knowledge. The couple of guys that I dealt with, they seemed to me like they were top-notch, absolutely knowledgeable people. So thanks to GRT support, and thanks for you guys, as always, for stopping in and putting up with my lengthy rambles, such as this one. This is now, what is that, almost 9 minutes, I believe, over 9 minutes. So thanks again for stopping in, and I'll continue to put out these videos as best I can. Like I've said multiple times already, things are a little bit different now. I'm back to work, and with the weather changing, I'll have a lot more responsibilities outside. So I can't do as much as I want to, as often as I want to, so the videos have really slowed down. But I'll keep turning them out when I can. I'll be filming anything that I think might be interesting and might be helpful. So stop in often, and thanks again. I will talk to you guys later.